Hello, viewers. My name is Alex Shepard. Welcome to another video. I just started this channel solid 5 days ago and got a couple great uploads, great feedback from it. Jason was joining me and he talked about the slaughter of white farmers in South Africa. I also got a great guest in Darius Turner talking about what it is like to be a conservative who's an African-American male in 2020 in the United States. I've got a very controversial guest with me here today that I'm going to introduce you to. But before I introduce you to my guest here, Justin, I do want to say that first of all, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like the video. Make sure you subscribe because on this channel, we're going to be talking about politics, but not only that, I'm going to be sharing a lot of my experience and a lot of my friends' experiences in business and entrepreneurship. So you're going to get a lot of value out of this channel. So make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video, and then share this video with everybody that you know. If you agree with it, if you disagree with it, share it with everybody you know. That way we can get the good word out. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest here. My guest is a young man by the name of Justin Nolan. And Justin Nolan, he on July 19th went viral for holding up a sign that was somewhat controversial. And I'm going to now share my screen here with you so you can see what that sign is. The sign here, he's at a rally or a protest or something it looks like, and he's holding a sign that says racism does not exist. And he's sporting a White History Month t-shirt. So I know that probably half of the viewers probably just got triggered just by seeing that. So we're going to dive in. We're going to see what motivated him to do this. We're going to talk to him about the current state of our country. We're going to talk about the backlash, if he's gotten any backlash from it. But you see, I mean, this guy went viral. 12,000 reactions. Some people loved it. A lot of people hated it. And a lot of people thought it was funny. And over 2,000 comments shared all across Facebook. So that's just to give you some perspective as to why I wanted to interview this gentleman here today. So without further ado, I want to introduce you here to Justin Nolan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And welcome, Justin.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So first question here. I read some comments. I read some from some people who were sharing it and everything. There was some discussion about whether that was photoshopped or not.
Yeah.
Was it photoshopped?
It's amazing. People can't fathom that a little white guy would be brave enough to carry something like that. But no, it is not photoshopped. It is 100% real. I understand that people will craft up those conspiracy theories because my hand holding this sign looks a little weird.
Right.
But I have another photo that shows, and you can actually see it from there as well, that there are holes in the top and bottom that I stick my hand through, and I was holding it like this, so I have my fingers coming through the holes like that, and that's why it looked a little strange. And that said, wouldn't it be really weird for me to just voluntarily take all that abuse and just Photoshop my way to fame? That'd be ridiculous. It would have been just as fine if I didn't go viral at all. The only reason I made that post was because I was already viral and I had to respond. Notice in the post, it said, last night, I apparently became famous. Well, I went to this rally. I held up my sign. Everything was fine. I hung out with my boys afterwards. And I didn't even look at my phone till the next day. And the next day, my phone's blowing up. I'm everywhere. My friends are like, wow, Justin, you're everywhere. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to respond now. And so I took a photo that probably one of the Antifa guys took and shared that. And it's amazing that a photo that I didn't even take is being called photoshopped. But yes, it is 100% real.
Right. And you see in the background that you've got that sign back there. It's a real sign, and I do see the holes in it. So that clears that one up. So then the next obvious question for everyone watching, they're probably wondering what motivated you to carry that sign. And I guess before that, you said you were at a rally. What rally were you at?
Well, it was a general pro-America rally. It was, it was actually a culmination of different groups of people, a lot of pro-Trumpers, a lot of anti-maskers, Proud Boys, a lot of different groups are converging for this one pro-America rally in Columbus, Ohio. And I decided to make a stand there because I had a lot of friends there. They had my back. And it was the right time because with all this Black Lives Matter lies and stuff going on, I thought, you know, we see a lot of people believing in a lot of falsehoods, a lot of lies, and they've been driven to hate and do a lot of harmful things, as we've been seeing for the past few months. And it's about time someone makes a stand. And what better way to make a stand than by making the most bold phrase anyone can say, and not just as a random person, but as a white man, nonetheless. So I thought, you know what? We need to get the truth out there. We need to try to shake some of these people awake. And I knew just because it's a pro-America rally that all the haters would come out, BLM, Antifa, and so on. And they did. They did. That's how they took the photos of me, right? They're on one side of the street and we were on the other. And that was the inspiration. I just trying to show the truth to people, trying to dissuade the lies. And it was amazing how many people agree with it, how many people already understood what I was talking about. So yeah, I did it for that reason, spread the truth, and I have no regrets about it.
So for those who don't automatically agree with you, for those of you who say, what on earth are you talking about with racism doesn't exist? I mean, there was the civil rights movement, there was slavery, there were all these things where African Americans and other things, like, I mean, Japanese people being put in internment camps, people discriminated on the basis of their race. What do you mean racism doesn't exist?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking. It's important to clarify because when I say that, it sounds like I'm dismissing the suffering of everyone in the world who has ever been hated upon for any reason. And I want to stress this word hate because that's what it really comes down to. See, the truth is that people hate people for many different reasons. It could be your skin color. It could be your weight. It could be just how you look in general. It could be how ugly or attractive you are. It could be your size. It could be your class. Many, many different reasons someone would have prejudice of you, judge you, hate you, and see themselves as better than you, right? The key thing is these words like racism put a lie in your head and make it seem like this kind of hate is any different or any more egregious than any other. The truth is, anytime you see yourself as better than someone for any reason, even if you think you're such a good person and that guy over there, that guy's a racist. I love black people. That person hates black people. Therefore, I'm better. That is hate. And that same hate that drives the people that are against so-called racism is driving them as well. Because of these fake words like racism, they shift their focus away from the spiritual battle, the hate within, and our focus is on physical attributes like race, like gender, and so on and so forth. But the truth is, it's not about the physical traits. It's not about your skin color. It's about the spirit within. It's about good versus evil, right and wrong. There is no racism, no sexism, no sort of homophobic ism or anything else. These isms are all lies that keep you stuck on the physical rather than actually recognizing hate where it really is. And there's a lot of lies that come from this word racism. There's systemic racism. There's plenty of times where people will say something is racist when it's really not. It's just the truth, you know, and it's just such a heavily abused and misused word that it doesn't really mean anything. And when I said racism doesn't exist, I don't mean it doesn't exist anymore. It has not existed in the Jim Crow era. It didn't exist during slavery. It didn't exist even when the Japanese were being put in internment camps or even when the Jews were being exterminated during the Holocaust. All of those are not instances of racism, which is a fake word, but instead instances of hate, instances of prejudice, instances where one person sees themselves as superior to another and enacts hatred towards them. If you don't recognize hate, if you don't focus on that, you're going to end up falling into the same hate yourself. Just like how the people today are burning down buildings, fighting each other, doing terrible things in the name of anti-racism. What they don't realize is that they're hating just as much as themselves, and because of that, they're no better. So that's what the message is all about. It's about focusing on the real source, hate, rather than these fake physical terms like racism.
So for somebody who's watching, for somebody who's watching who is Black, for example, they might be watching and thinking, what the hell is this white boy talking about? I've experienced racism before, but you're not saying that they haven't experienced what they've experienced. You're saying that if they have been discriminated against and when they have been discriminated against on the basis of their skin color, not that it didn't happen, but that was just somebody hating them, and that racism is kind of a smokescreen, and homophobia and sexism, those are all smokescreen terms to kind of shield people away from the real truth of the situation, which is the hatred or the evil. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it goes further than that, because the problem with these words like racism is that they keep you so laser focused on looking at the skin color of the people involved, like with the cases of George Floyd or Jacob Blake. They have you so focused on that you attribute racism to situations that have nothing to do with hate at all. So in the best case, you may have experienced someone that actually hates you. Yeah, it's for your skin color, but it's really just hate. In the worst case, though, and honestly, more often, you see something as racist, you see something as hateful when it's really not, when it really has nothing to do with skin color at all. But because you're focused on this lie of racism, and you're not focused on just looking at hate where it really is, you see a situation where someone's just doing their honest best as racist. You see entire systems like the United States, for example, as racist, because you're so focused on skin color that you're not, it's stopping you from seeing what's really going on. It's stopping you from looking at what's right or wrong and instead focusing on skin color. And that's not how we should be going about things.
So some people who are watching this might be watching and thinking, well, what's this guy Justin's motive? Does he dislike Black people? Does he hate Black people or Mexican people or anything like that? So I mean, I'm not accusing you of that, but that might be an elephant in the room for some people. So I just got to get it out there. I mean, do you love Black people?
I understand, and honestly, it's a great question to ask, because I've gotten so much hate for this. I've gotten so many people accusing me of hating Black people, of hating just everyone under the sun, and just being a privileged white kid that doesn't get it. I understand that, but the truth is, I love Black people. I love Mexican people. I love white people. I love everyone. And the reason I made this sign, the reason I'm saying racism doesn't exist, is because I love them. It's because I love people enough to say the truth, the real truth, the truth that no one wants to say, that no one wants to hear, the truth that people are afraid to say, despite the fact that I know it's going to get me in trouble. Love means telling the truth. Love means being right, doing right, and leading the way. And I'm expressing that love by showing people, hey, you've been lied to. This word racism isn't real. You've been made angry by these fake words, by this false reality developed by racism, quote unquote. And because you've been made angry, you're being used, you're being controlled. In fact, the other side of my sign says, you are being used. And so I'll flip that over when I see the Antifa people, just to say, hey, you have fallen for lies here. You're being used to destroy. And but with this sign, my motivation is to help people snap out of it. Tell people, see, you know what? I have been believing in lies. I have been believing in falsehoods. I have been living in a separate reality. Now I need to get back to the real world and focus on what actually matters, rather than get angry by these fake words, rather than be controlled by them.
Right. So you mentioned lies that are being used. tell me, what are some of these lies? What you say that people are falling for lies, they're being used. Who specifically is using Antifa? Who specifically is using Black Lives Matter? What is their end goal? What's their agenda? And how are these lies being sold to them?
I mean, there's no better way to say this than evil forces beyond our understanding. You could even say, the devil, Satan. They're literally being used by the Lord of Darkness himself to commit evil through these lies. And you could, if you want to focus on physical aspects, you could say blasé stuff like the Democrats or elite politicians or people that just benefit from the destruction, the chaos, and the confusion. People like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, who make millions off of Black people by making them angry, by stirring a frenzy, and then going to speak or at funerals or whatever and making a huge killing of money at it, right? So there's a lot of people that profit, but the big, spiritual side of things is that they're being used for evil by evil. And the lies I'm talking about will include, of course, racism, the idea that Black people are oppressed because of their skin color, the idea that they just can't get by because of their skin color, the idea that police are racist and are attacking them because they're Black. All of these are lies. And what is being done here is that they're being made angry. And when you're made angry, when you're made emotional, it's easy to manipulate you. It's easy to get you to do what someone else wants. People use this tactic all the time. They'll make you angry, so you lash out and you fall right into their hands like putty, like a fiddle. And in this sense, you have a situation where a lot of people are making money off Black people who are angry. A lot of people are benefiting from all this destruction. And it's terrible to see because it's not helping the Black community at all. They're having them focus on these lies like racism, police brutality, and so on, instead of actually looking within and trying to fix what's really going on, the real issues facing the Black community and the real causes for the suffering they face.
Okay, so you mentioned you've gotten some backlash. I mean, I would have expected you would have gotten some backlash for it.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't, I've been saying some bold stuff. I haven't been saying, I didn't go out carrying a sign saying racism doesn't exist. So I can't imagine what kind of backlash you've received. Could you tell us a little bit about some of that backlash and what's been happening to you?
Gosh, if I were just to scroll through my messages and share the stuff that's been said, we'd be here for at least 4 hours going through it all. I've gotten probably between 700 to 800 hate messages on Facebook. And fortunately, I just ignore them. It's no big deal. It just rolls off me like water. But yeah, I've got a ton of hate. I've gotten a lot of threats of people have tried to find my information on Yellow Pages and stuff. And fortunately, they haven't. At least not the most useful information. And it's crazy. It's crazy how far people will go to destroy a man when they know nothing about him. Because I don't hate anybody. As I said, I love everyone. Black people, white people, Mexicans, everyone. Even people that are doing the most wrong things on the planet, I love them too. But they act like I hate everything because of just this one sign, and they're willing to destroy me for it. That's one way these words are used. Words like racism, for some people, it's like their eyes just go red, like Terminator, and target acquired, destroy. Literally, they'll see, oh, this person's racist, and they'll attack them like dogs, like a dog to a bone, because they're being controlled by this word. They're being controlled to the point where they're willing to destroy somebody they don't even know, they don't even understand over a word. And yeah, it's been pretty intense, but the only thing I fear is God. I don't fear any of these people, and I know their threats are empty and meaningless, so it doesn't bother me one bit.
Yeah, so I expected that you probably would have gotten some hate messages from people you don't know. What about people that you do know? Because I know me personally, just for supporting Trump, I've had friends I've grown up with since middle school. Several people that I thought were true friends that were close to me who cut me off the moment I supported Trump. And it's almost like we're living in a Salem witch trials of sorts today. Have you had any of those people close to you cut you off or anything like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My sister, who, we've always had fights. She knew I was a Trump supporter before this, and she didn't really talk to me much already. But after this whole came out, man, she was so upset. My cousin too, who I thought was more on my side, actually went online and started talking about how I'm a white supremacist, which is, as far from the truth as you can get. I don't think I'm supreme to anyone. A lot of family members didn't like it at all. They stopped talking to me. They blocked me. Like, I can't even call some of these family members. They literally blocked my number. I can't even explain to them. A lot of friends think the same way. But at the same time, here's what's really interesting. A lot of friends commended me for it. A lot of my new friends, a lot of the friends that were there at the protest as well, they were very proud of what I did. And I actually made a lot of new friends too. So yes, I lost some old friends, and I'll probably seeing those family members at Christmas, but otherwise they won't talk to me. That said, it's okay because I hate to be all biblical, but there's a part in the Bible that mentions how Jesus didn't come to unite. He came to divide people. And that's what you do when you say something so bold and strong. The people who think love you, the people who you think respect you, will reveal themselves to truly be the enemies they always were. Love isn't something that's conditional. Love isn't something that's based on what you believe. You either love someone or you don't. It shouldn't be based on how they feel about things. That's not love. And so the family members and the friends who decide to stop talking to me, who hate me, who decide to call me names and slander me online, well, they were never really truly with me anyways, and that's okay. I have people that are truly with me, and, I couldn't be any happier about it, honestly.
Yeah. So you mentioned that something you've been labeled as by certain people. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you don't mind sharing, how old are you?
I love keeping it a mystery, but I respect you, so I'll answer. I'm 25 years old.
25. Okay, you look younger than that, by the
I
way.
know. That's why they keep it a mystery. Because no one expects a little 12-year-old to be saying the stuff I'm saying, but if I don't say anything, that's what they think, and it blows their mind. So
Yeah.
I I have a bit of an advantage there, right? Of course, not the bars. They always try to card me, and sometimes they don't believe me. But I always have a good time with it.
So you're 25, and if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for work?
I'll I'm keeping that a mystery.
Okay.
I do have a self-employed job through my diabetic coaching called Tame Type One. I'm going to admit that because I own
Yeah.
that. No one can cancel me from my own gig, right?
Right.
So I do that on the side. I do diabetic coaching because I'm a Type One diabetic myself, and I manage it a very particular way. I have a website, tametype1.com, and a YouTube channel and Facebook and all of that. But I also have a 9 to 5 that also pays the bills, and that's as much I'll say about that.
Sure. Sure.
Right.
Now, the reason I asked though is because have you gotten any feedback from your 9 to 5 employer?
Well, it's very interesting. I've actually done a very good job of keeping my 9 to 5 private. Um, Only one person was able to figure it out, and they only called the place once, and nothing else ever happened. So we did get one call, and the boss complained to me about that. He wasn't too happy, but I explained to him, and I said, hey, shouldn't happen anymore. It didn't, and we're peachy keen now. So by the grace of God, I'm still here today, and honestly, I don't fear it. If the opposite were to happen and I were to get fired, it's okay. I'd keep going. I'd find something new to do. That doesn't bother me at all. People need to stop being so worried about losing their job or losing this. You have to put the truth over these material things, and you need to have faith in God that He'll work it out for you. As long as you're being right, you're doing right, you're being honest, and you're doing the right thing, He'll make a way for you, man. And He's made a way for me, so I'm not fearful about it. Whatever happens, happens. But so far, things are peachy.
Yeah, what I've noticed and what is frightening is that we seem to have lost our First Amendment in the United States.
Hmm.
Not only our First Amendment right to assemble with the whole coronavirus thing, which we might get into in a little bit, but also our right to freedom of speech, because if your employer doesn't like what you have to say, you can get canceled like that by the leftist outrage cancel mob, and they can, I mean, they can take away your source of income. So yeah, a lot of people are scared to speak up right now, and a lot of people don't have the don't have the privilege of being in control of their own income, and being uncancelable as someone who does diabetic coaching, such as yourself. Um, Let me ask you. You said you love everyone. You said you love black people, white people, Mexicans. You've been called a white supremacist. You're not a white supremacist. Now, an obvious question that might come up for someone who's watching is, in that initial image, you're wearing a shirt that says White History. The shirt says White History Month. Could you elaborate on what that is?
Well, as you mentioned when we started, this was on July 19th, and July is White History Month. It's a month where we celebrate white history, because if we're going to have a month for everything else, why not have a White History Month? And it's not about any sort of supremacy. It's not about, white pride or anything like that, because pride itself is a sin, but it's about appreciating and celebrating the many works and historical contributions of white people. And there are plenty. There are plenty, let's be honest. White people helped build the greatest civilization on this side of heaven, America. And, they've done a lot over the past few years. And hopefully we can also make our own contributions to history in due time. But it's amazing to me how people are afraid just to acknowledge the fact that white people have done good things, that we're not evil, that we're not oppressors, that the vast majority of white people have contributed good, and it's a real shame that people are afraid to say that, because it's not a hateful thing at all. It's not a message that should be taboo. If you're allowed to celebrate any other history, whether it be women's history, black history, whatever it is, you should be able to celebrate white history too. And I have people saying, oh, we celebrate white history all the time. Well, have you been celebrating history the past few months while you've been tearing down statues of white people? Is that how you celebrate white history? By tearing down statues and dragging everyone's name through dirt, calling people like Washington oppressors and slave traders and all this stuff? Yeah, there's ugly stuff in our past, but you can't ignore the fact that we've also done a lot of good. You can't ignore that. And it's a shame that people are afraid to say that. So I wanted to make that stand, especially with at the time, a lot of statues being torn down. It's not happening more, but it was. And it's time we get some respect for that and remember and appreciate white history, because that has had a great impact on society and the world at large.
All right. Now, another thing I want to ask about, what sparked a lot of these riots, what sparked a lot of these, as CNN and MSNBC would call peaceful protests, right, has been the death of George Floyd, right? And the death of George Floyd, and some people might be listening to you thinking, well, Black Lives Matter is about protecting black people, such as George Floyd, from violent police officers and so on and so forth. And what we want is, we just want black people to stop getting killed, such as George Floyd. What's your response to that? What's your opinion on the George Floyd situation? And then what's your opinion on Black Lives Matter as a movement?
It's another case of them being used by these beliefs made by the word racism, made by words like police brutality. They're being used by lies. Because of the case of George Floyd and many others, what happens is you get out of context videos that go viral, that make people angry. And again, when they're angry, they're easy to control, they're easy to manipulate. And you've had a lot of people manipulated into thinking that police on black crime is this huge issue, when really it's not. It's really not a big issue at all. It's a drop in the bucket compared to, any other way black people are dying. And the thing is, I get that if you try to bring up other ways that black people are being killed, like through the womb, black on black crime, what have you, they'll say, oh, well, that doesn't matter. We're focused on police. Well, if Black Lives Matter so much to you, then why are you focused on one of these most insignificant factors playing into Black mortality? And the thing is, with the case of George Floyd, it was completely justified. Of course, it didn't seem like that with the out of context video, but when the body cam footage came out, it was clear that George Floyd was nuts. He was on drugs or something. He was going crazy. And they tried to just get him in the car so they could take him out because he was on some stuff. And he literally dove out of the cop car and said, "I want to lay on the ground. I want to lay on the ground." And Derek Chauvin, unlucky guy that he is like, "Okay, I guess I have to put you on the ground, but I'm going to have to restrain you." And that's where the knee came in. If George Floyd just sat in the freaking cop car and didn't try to dive out and make a scene and try to get away or whatever he was doing, he would have never died. If the cops involved were just angry and racist and wanted to kill a black man that day, they wouldn't have waited that long to do it. They wouldn't have done it in public. It's amazing that people think a lynching took place when, I mean, it really was just an unfortunate situation. And I'm not saying that George Floyd deserved to die. Of course not. It's a tragic situation. No one should ever have to die like that. But it clearly wasn't just the cop's fault. It wasn't some premeditated murder. It was an unfortunate situation that happened primarily because he resisted arrest. Now, me just saying that will make people upset. Me just saying that will trigger people and saying, "Oh, well, resisting arrest is when you die." Of course it doesn't. But you know what? If you want to avoid dying, that's what you do. That's just a logical thing to do. And if we're stuck on these fake words like racism, these fake concepts like police brutality, instead of just looking at what's true and what's false, you're going to keep being angry about these things and you're never going to see what's going on. And guess what happens? You're going to be made angry again and again and again. The next video about police brutality showing another out of context photo or video is going to come out, and you're going to get mad about that. And then when the footage comes out exonerating officers, you're going to ignore it. You're going to forget about it. And the next one comes around, you're going to be made angry again. You need to break out of this cycle, this vicious cycle of anger, of perpetuating the cops having to become more aggressive and perpetuating this sort of brutality you're so angry about. You need to break that cycle by seeing the lies for what they are. This George Floyd thing is a total fiasco, and it almost always is. Even before seeing the out of context footage, even when all of these so-called conservatives were on George Floyd's side, I could tell there was more to this story. I could tell there was some lies afoot here. I want people to have that kind of foresight as well. And until they do, they're going to keep being manipulated. And it's really sad to see. Most people don't even know who George Floyd is. He probably wasn't a good person. His kids didn't even know him, And it's a shame that people have been manipulated into fighting for just honestly not good people, for criminals, and destroying everything good and fighting for everything evil and hating people that are just trying to do their job. It's a shame.
Yeah, no, and on the George Floyd thing, in your defense, I mean, they came out with the autopsy afterwards, and it turned out that, according to the autopsy, 30 minutes after that whole situation, he died from a fentanyl overdose. That's what they say, at least. And they also apparently the handbook in their police manual says that when somebody does that, when they fall to the ground like that, the way that you prevent anything from happening is that you do exactly what that police officer did, and put your knee on the guy. So that's just what's coming out about it, and maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the autopsy is wrong. Maybe the police handbook's wrong. But there definitely are two sides of the story, and for some reason we're not hearing that other side. Now, in regards to Black Lives Matter as an organization, or as a movement, what's your impression of the movement, of the organization? Is it good? Is it bad? What's your opinion on that?
It's evil. It's evil, and it's based on lies. Just the phrase itself, Black Lives Matter, is a lie. None of the people chanting this phrase actually mean what they're saying, because of course, as we were talking about earlier, most of the Black lives don't actually matter. Black unborn lives don't matter. You probably have tons of women protesting to this that killed their kids in the womb earlier this year. None of them care about how they eat, despite the fact that obesity is the #1 killer of Black people. None of them care about the rampant crime in Chicago and other areas that is killing way more than the cops ever can. So Black Lives Matter isn't an accurate phrase. They don't even mean what they're saying. So a lot of people will say, oh, I don't support the organization, I support the movement. I don't support either. It's a lie. It's not real. They're fighting for something that is not real, and in doing so, they're only being used to destroy. And the fact is, Black Lives Matter wasn't started by someone who's just pro-Black. It was started by a communist, an actual radical Marxist, a lesbian who hates family, who hates America, who literally hates everything good and wants evil. And the worst thing that could happen to the Black community is to get rid of the family. Exactly what Black Lives Matter explicitly wants to do. They want to get rid of the nuclear family. But the fact is, that's the key to solving all of these Black Lives Matter issues. That's the key to solving the Black on Black crime. That's the key to solving the police violence. That's the key to solving the abortion rate being extraordinarily high for the Black community. That's the solution, is family and morals and character. And that is exactly what Black Lives Matter is fighting against, is morals, character, and what is right. So it's an evil movement. It's an evil Marxist movement that is just using the youth, a lot of white youth and a lot of Black people, to activate them for the Democrat Party, to activate them for leftist Marxist causes, and make them think like they're doing something good. You know, it's a real shame that people are afraid to say that just because they're skin color, just because they're white. But you shouldn't be afraid to call it evil where it is. And Black Lives Matter, the movement and the organization, is evil. It's a lie, straight up.
Wow, powerful stuff there. A lot of very interesting stuff covered. You mentioned that Black Lives Matter on their website. I encourage people to go to blacklivesmatter.com and look around on their website. They do say that they want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure, meaning a father, mother, and some kids. Which I don't understand why they would want to do that. I mean, it sounds like a good idea to me, to have a father, mother, and kids. And then they also say on their website that they want to raise kids in quote unquote communities, and they want mothers in the communities. They mention the mothers. They don't say anything about fathers on the website, which is kind of interesting. But on that point, you said that what the Black community needs the most is that family structure. Could you elaborate as to what you mean by that? Do they have it? Do other communities have that family structure? And if not, then what caused that family structure to go away? And what would cause that family structure to come back to Black communities and other communities?
Well, first let me preface this by saying I know I'm white, because a lot of people are going to think, oh, you can't talk on the behalf of the Black community. You can't talk on the behalf of Black families because you're white. You don't understand it. Well, I do know statistics, right? And I have plenty of statistics to prove what I'm talking about. The fact is, family is and has been the biggest issue for the Black community since the 70s. And it's getting worse for everyone now because families are being dissolved across all racial lines, across all class lines too, rich and poor. Families are being dissolved. It's happening everywhere. But the Black community has led the way for decades. At this point now, I believe over 80% of Black babies are born out of wedlock. And by default, that means you're being born into a broken family. Because
I got to correct you. It's over 70%, like 77% is what.
Okay, 77%. Thank you.
But I mean, still really high figures. So carry on.
And also, I believe it's either over a quarter or maybe even up to 50% of Black kids are killed in the womb. So you have a nasty situation where family isn't a respected concept anymore. Fathers leave the home. And it's very unfortunate because what ends up happening is without that father figure, or even if the father is there but he is weak, you end up in a situation where the kids aren't raised right, where the boys don't have someone to look up to, where the boys don't have an example to guide them in the right way. And they need that father, and not a stepfather, not some just any guy. It has to be their father, the one they have the spiritual connection with. Only their biological father can make a boy right. And so many people of all races are missing that, but it's especially bad in the Black community. Ever since the Civil Rights Act and ever since welfare became a thing, which incentivized families to divide because they had got more welfare that way, after that happened, it was over for the Black community, because without that root, without a strong family, the mother and the father together, the father leading the way, the father being the example of what a man should be, it's torn them apart, and it's only gotten worse and worse with each generation. And now you see him going nuts, you see him angry, you see him resentful, you see him believing into these lies, and you could blame it on some physical thing, but the truth is they're only angry, they're only believing into all these lies and hating because they didn't have that spiritual connection with their father. And until they reestablish that, until they realize, you know what, I need to make amends here. I need to love my family again. I need to love my father. I need to forgive my mother, and I need to get back to my roots. Before, if they don't do that, they're just going to keep being used. They're never going to be born again and connected with God. Because I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but follow along with me. There's a spiritual order to things. If you're a Christian, you understand there's a spiritual order. God over Christ, Christ over man, man over woman, and woman over children. And if anything in that order breaks, let's say the man's out of the picture, well, you lose that connection to God. So you need to connect with your father. You need to love and respect him. And ideally, he needs to raise you and be that good example. Without that, you're going to be led astray. You're going to be led by evil forces. And the Black community is a great example of this. It's happening everywhere. We're seeing a lot of white people in BLM too, right? But I guarantee you with most of these white people, it's the same thing. They didn't grow up with good fathers. They might not have grown up with a father. It's getting worse and worse everywhere. And unfortunately, the Black community has led the way on that.
Yeah, so for somebody who's watching this, a couple things. A lot of stuff covered. First of all, for the women watching this, because I know a lot of women, when they hear something like a child needs a man to show their father to show them and lead them in the right way to go, some women might be thinking, single mothers, well, I am, the baby daddy ditched me, and I had to be the father and the mother for my child, and I can't let my child be with the kid either, or excuse me, my child be with their father because their father was mean to me, maybe emotionally abusive, maybe they cheated, maybe they're an alcoholic, maybe they're a drug addict, whatever. What would you have to say to a mother watching this, or maybe even a mother who, or a woman in general who is just watching this thinking, well, why is that father figure so important for a kid, and why can't it be a stepfather?
Well, the main thing it comes down to is it's very unfortunate that so many men aren't real men anymore, end up not being able to handle their wives and end up leaving the kids with them, or whatever happens. The truth of the matter is, the man often leaves the wife and not the children. I hate to be mean here, but it's more often than not, the woman can't admit where she was wrong in the relationship. She has a huge ego, and she can't admit, you know what? Maybe I screwed up somewhere. Maybe I drove this man away, and maybe I should share some responsibility for that. And I'm not doing that to blame all women, because yeah, there's a plenty of bad men out there. There's alcoholics, there's terrible men out there. There's even cases of rape, of course. There's many men out there. There's many bad men out there, but there's also many bad women. There's also many bad mothers. And mothers on their own, it sucks if you're in this situation. It really is unfortunate if you're in the situation where you have to raise a kid on your own. But you gotta understand that It is not. It is not within you to teach a man how to be a man. It's just not within you. You have to understand your limitations. Just like how I can't get pregnant and have a kid, right? I understand I have limitations in life. Well, women do as well. They can't do it all. They need the man there, and they need specifically the biological father, because any other man you try to bring in there, that kid's going to resent. That kid's not going to feel the same way about a stepdad as he does for his real dad. That spiritual connection is missing. And it's not going to make sense to someone that doesn't understand the spiritual side of things, doesn't understand that there's more to life than just what meets the eye. But the truth is there is. And I just know from personal experience, I had to deal with a divorce myself. I was separated. My parents separated when I was like 10 years old, and I had to live with my mother. She ended up destroying me because she didn't know how to raise a man. I ended up becoming weak because of that. And she had a husband, a new husband come in and try to make me a man, but I never wanted to listen to him because I knew he wasn't my real dad. I resented him. I resented my mom for trying to bring this man in my life who wasn't my dad. And I resented my mom for that. And I also resented my dad because of how my mom talked about him. A lot of women have this issue of, because they have this big ego, because they want to blame the man, they talk bad about the father even with the kids. And the key here with this connection of God and Christ, Christ over man, man over woman over children, is if the kids resent their father, if the kids resent their father, they will not be able to love God. And if you can't love God, if you're not connected with him, then you're going to be led astray by the world, by evil forces. So if you're in this situation right now, woman, you have a kid out of wedlock, or you're in a bad situation, it might get bad. You raised your child the wrong way. It's in a broken family. Good luck to you. But at the very least, you should let your kid know that, hey, maybe his dad's done some bad things, but he's still your dad, and you need to love him. You need to respect him. You need to admire him. Because if you don't, that kid's going to be lost. And this applies to girls too. Girls also need to love their fathers, because without that love, they're not going to be connected with God. Without that love, they're not going to have that light brought down to them that can only come from God. And it's unfortunate because, we don't have a lot of men left. Most fathers aren't men. They're males, but they're not a good example. They're not a good example of what a man should be. And so even with the father, you might end up raising a kid that isn't right in the head, that ends up doing terrible things. But that's why it's so important for men to become men again. I'm not trying to blame everything on women here. Men are a big problem too. They need to become men again. They need to connect with God as well. And so that way, when they have families, they can do it the right way. That's what it comes down to. That's what's going to save the Black community and the other communities at this point, is men becoming men again, woman being receptive to that, of course, and raising families, the next generation, the right way. Because until that happens, nothing's ever going to get better.
So you mentioned that you were raised, so you're not just making this stuff up. I mean, you lived
I have
it.
experience, yes.
You had experience where your parents were divorced at the age of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother turned you away from your father, tried to put another father figure in your life. You resented her, you resented him, and then you resented your dad because of what your mom said about him. So you didn't have a spiritual connection to God. So my next question is then, obviously, assuming that you now have that, because it's what you're telling us. So for someone who maybe their father's out of their life, or maybe their parents got divorced, or maybe they have a weak father that can't show them the right way to go, and for somebody who has inner turmoil, inner anger, which, as you mentioned, angry people are people who are easily controlled by dark forces.
They believe in lies. That's what
Right.
it comes down to. And those lies is what makes them angry.
So,
They
so
have a spirit
my
of hatred
question,
within them that shows that way, right?
right. So my question then is, what do you recommend to those people to overcome that, and to be reconnected to God on the spiritual side of things?
Okay. So the first thing is, we're getting pretty on the nose here. So I'm going to say up front that the man who really inspired these ideas I'm presenting is a man named Jesse Lee Pearson. He's a a black reverend from California. And if you really want to learn more about what we're talking about right now, look him up on YouTube. Look at his channel, watch his show. You'll learn more about him that way. But the short and sweet of it is, how you overcome that is by first observing yourself, is by first seeing where you're going wrong. What I found in myself was that I resented my mother, and because I did, I became like her. You become like what you hate. I became a huge worrier. I became, negligent and irresponsible in life. I was very emotional, like a woman, as many men are today, unfortunately. And the truth is, once I realized that I became like the person I hate, I became like my mother, I realized that I couldn't help it. I realized I had this darkness within me that was making me do that. And so when I realized that, I thought, okay, well, if that spirit of anger is in me, then it's going to be in the people I hate too. It's going to be in my mom, who didn't raise me right, who left my dad. It's going to be in my dad, who isn't a perfect man himself, right? He has his problems too. It's in these people that I've hated. It's in these people that I have judged wrongly and see myself as better than. And how can I see myself as better? How can I judge? How can I hate when I have fallen for the same thing? So you have to go and forgive them for that. You have to forgive your mother for destroying you like that. You have to forgive your father for not being there. You have to learn to love them with the right love, with God's love, a love that doesn't have fear, a love that isn't about being nice, but it's about being real, but it's about respect. And once you're there, once you forgive your parents, then God forgives you, and you can overcome that fallen state. And it's not something that will happen overnight, but over time I've gone to the point where I no longer have fear. I literally made this sign and did what I did because I have no fear. I did what I did because I understand that the truth is more important. And it would have never happened if I didn't forgive my mother, if I didn't overcome the emotions that she bestowed onto me, and I didn't become a real man. There's just no other way around it. You have to reconnect with the family, forgive your parents, and find out what really happened there. Find out what really happened. It'll make all the difference. And the first step is observing yourself and seeing where you've been wrong.
Wow. So going into this interview, I know a lot of people might have clicked on this video expecting to hear expecting you perhaps to be wearing a white hood,
A little pointy, right?
just to
Get
be,
a traffic cone on there.
right. But in all seriousness, what you're saying is much deeper than, it's not anything against black people. It's not anything against anybody who's experienced hatred for their skin color. What you're trying to do is you're trying to point people back to God by realizing that those words are all, things that are just other ways to describe evil, in a sense. I mean, racism, it's hatred. All these sexism, it's hatred. Now, let me ask you
It's
this.
all the same spirit is what it comes down to. It's spiritual, not physical. And what these words do is keep you focused on the physical rather than what actually lies within. And if you don't understand the spiritual side of things, you'll never see that hate within yourself. And you'll end up falling for the same hate that you think your enemies are falling for. And it's not going to get any better. You can't fight hate with hate.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Why is it that we live in a society, as you said, where there are so few real men who are afraid to stand up for what's right, who are afraid to be strong, and who frankly are weak? Why do we have so many weak men? And then also, I want to ask you, what do you think how do you think our society portrays men today?
Well, a lot of institutions have been weakened, and including the church, and as a result, people don't have that kind of faith that they used to have. They're fearful. They're fearful of what could happen to them in the physical. They're fearful of losing their things. They're fearful of their family hating them. They're fearful of being shunned. They're too obsessed and possessed by what they have. They're too afraid of losing it that they're not willing to speak the truth. An allegory I thought of a while ago for this is, imagine you wake up, your eyes open one day, and you notice that a python is coiled around you. Its grip is tightening, ever tightening, but you notice you have enough room to try to wiggle your arm out. It's looking at you with a fierce, snaky grin, but you have enough effort right now to be able to pull an arm out and grab the snake by the fangs and choke it and destroy it. The problem is, if you do that, you know you're going to get bit. You know it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot. You might lose your hand over it. It might be a venomous snake. But you gotta understand that if you don't do that, if you let the python tighten and tighten its grip on you, on society, on the world at large, and of course by python I mean the evil of this world, if you don't fight back, if you don't risk getting hurt, there's going to come a time where it'll be too late, where you're going to have to just suffer, where you're going to get hurt more than anything. You might be worried about losing your job right now, or losing your family, or losing something important to you. Well, guess what? You're going to lose it anyways, along with your dignity, if you don't start standing up, if you don't start speaking out, if you don't drop that fear, that emotion that was given to you by your mother, who you must forgive to overcome. If you don't drop that and become a real man, then you're not going to figure it out. And the thing is, most men are being told that it's okay to be emotional. That's okay to be like a woman, essentially. And it's going to sound very sexist for me to say, oh, be like a woman. What do you mean by be like a woman? You know exactly what I mean. Don't play dumb. You know exactly what I mean. Just because I'm not afraid to say it doesn't mean I hate them. I love women too, you know? And the fact is, you have a lot of men right now that act like women, that are emotional, that are cowards. And we need to stop letting that happen. We need to rebuild ourselves. We need to become men of God again, men who do not fear, men who are of logic, of reason, who do not fall for these fake lies, who do not fall for these fake words, and think that being angry, especially about things that have nothing to do with them, like George Floyd, is justified. It's never justified to be angry. It's never justified to hate. You should always love. You should always act with logic and reason and love. But until you overcome that fear, until you overcome that fallen state and become born again, you're not going to be able to get there.
Yeah. So I mean, back to that question though. Do you feel like men are portrayed in a positive light in our society today? And
right. They are not. They are not.
Okay. Well, and how so?
Okay. I mean, it's pretty clear, right? It's you see all these shows, even the old days has been a thing. Sitcoms will portray the father as dumb, as dopey, and they'll portray him more as like an aloof figure that's watching TV and just, you know, looking at sports or something like that and eating popcorn and chicken, instead of being the leader, instead of leading the family. There's so many media portrayals of the wife leading rather than the husband, which is the exact opposite way it should be. Men are portrayed as weak. They're portrayed as weak, and unfortunately, men are being told that this is how they should be, that this is normal, that it is okay to be like that. And you even have a lot of examples of, you know, the promotion of homosexuality, drag queen story hour, all of these crazy things. You have all these shows of men in drag walking around putting makeup on people. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a lot of there's a big push to feminize men, to see men as weak, to see men as incapable, to see men as lazy followers rather than the leaders, rather than the strong, capable men that they're supposed to be. And unfortunately, people end up reflecting that. Not everyone. Some people can overcome that, but many people end up thinking that's okay. It's okay for me to be like Homer Simpson or whoever, because, you know, that's just how men are supposed to be according to the media I watch. We need to overcome those lies and see them for what they are.
All right. Yeah. Now, last question here for you, Justin. Again, I really appreciate you the time taking the time out to do this interview. I'll give you a second here in a minute to promote anything you have to promote, your coaching, etc. But before that, well, actually, I've got a couple questions. Just one question.
Okay.
The election coming up, 2020. Who are you voting for and why?
Obviously, Donald Trump. Obviously. How could you vote for anyone else in this time? And it's, I love to see him win, but I'm a little worried with this mail-in voting everything. There might not be election results, at least not in November. We might end up having some serious turmoil coming up in the next few months. I mean, you think it's bad right now? Just wait until it's November 20th and the results still aren't in and people are getting really antsy. But yeah, I'm voting for Trump. 4 more years, absolutely. Trump is actually, I'll tell you what, if you're looking for an example of what a man should be, look at Donald Trump. Watch his speeches, watch the way he acts, watch the way he deals with the press. He's not perfect, okay? He's not always perfect. There's a few times he puts his foot in his mouth, right? But in general, he's a very strong man. He sticks to his guns. He doesn't back down. He doesn't make excuses. He calls out the liars for what they are, and it's fine to do that. It's not judgment. It's not negativity. It's just being honest. You know, so I really respect a man like that. And honestly, he's done a lot of good. He's not my perfect person, right? I wish he'd go further in some things and he'd go less far in some things. He's not perfect, but you know, I've never had a president my entire life who has done as much good for this country as President Trump has in 4 years. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on board with you there. Now, are you going to be 2024? You'll be supporting Kanye with me, right?
Well, I kind of hope Trump wins again. I'd vote for him the 3rd time. But otherwise, hey, Yeezy, I'd consider it. But Yeezy, I love him. He's on the right way. He's at the door, but he still has a lot of passion. He still has a lot of emotion. And if he can just overcome that and like become the real man that he's about to be, because he's on his way. He's seeking, he's searching, you know, he's getting there. People call him crazy. Well, that means I love him more. But if he gets there, then we'll see. Because I can't think of, I kind of hope Trump once again, because I can't think of anyone else to replace him. Honestly, I can't think of anyone else quite like Trump. He's the man we need. But given he doesn't run, given he plays by the rules, you know what? I'm down for Yeezy, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He posted that meme saying he'd be president forever, and I mean, it does get some of our hopes up, but I do think he'll stick to 2 terms for sure.
Probably. He plays by the rules,
Yeah.
for better or for worse.
Yeah. So Justin, this has been an incredible interview. I'm super stoked to get your message out there and to share it with the world. Anything you want to promote?
Absolutely. So, of course, there's a diabetic coaching I do, Tame Type One. You can find it on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, tametype1.com. But also, I have a YouTube channel dedicated and a Facebook page dedicated to the stuff I'm talking about here. You know, racism, non-existing, police brutality, amongst other things. I just started it recently, just how you started your channel recently. But I already have a few videos on it, including one explaining my take on racism. So if you'd like to learn more about my take on that and really see what I'm about, check out my YouTube channel, Lies Among Us. Lies Among Us, because hate lies among us, evil lies among us, and to expose the lies among us, it's time we have to find the truth. So that's what I like to promote. You can link at the bottom of the description if you want. But yeah, check me out there. Or if you're type 1 diabetic like me, you're trying to find a better way, check out Tame Type 1. But it was an honor being here. It was an honor talking with you, man. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for joining us. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, then I want you to do a few things. First of all, like the video. If you haven't done it yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. We are already over 20 subscribers. We want to get to over 50 by the end of the week. I think we've got a pretty good shot at making it happen. Got a couple good more videos lined up. We've posted a lot of political stuff here recently. I'm going to switch it up, post a couple business things as well, because those are a couple of my passions. This channel wouldn't be as political as it is if politicians would mind their own damn business and keep their greedy fingers away from my business.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, like the video, subscribe it, share it with everyone you know, comment, let me know what you think. Let Justin know what you think as well. Make sure you check out his stuff. If you're a diabetic, check out his stuff. I can't imagine a better coach for you. And then also check out his YouTube channels. Really excited to see what Justin does going forward. Thank you again for joining me, Justin.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And have a great rest of your day, guys. And I will see you in the next video.